the Council's mockery. The Grand Assembly Hall floated in the void between star systems, a massive structure built from crystallized light and quantum-locked matter. Inside its transparent walls, representatives from 200 civilizations gathered in desperate urgency. The room hummed with translated voices, each species speaking in their native tongue while universal translators converted the chaos into understanding. The threat arrives. High Chancellor Vorthek of the Selenar Dominion stood at the central podium, his translucent form flickering with distress. The holographic display behind him showed devastation beyond comprehension. Entire star systems reduced to dark matter, planets cracked open like eggs, space stations torn apart at the molecular level. The Devourers have crossed the galactic barrier, Vorthek announced, his voice carrying the weight of extinction. 17 systems have gone silent in the past cycle. Our most advanced reconnaissance drones show a fleet of unprecedented scale moving through the outer rim. They consume everything. Matter, energy, even the fabric of spacetime itself. A wave of panic rippled through the assembly. The Devourers were not a myth or ancient legend. They were real and they were coming. Commander Zixral of the Crichton Empire slammed his armored fist against his seat's console. The Crichtons were warriors, their exoskeletons covered in battle scars from 1,000 conflicts. How many ships do they command? Our estimates suggest 40,000 capital vessels, Vorthek replied. Each one capable of destroying a moon. Their technology operates on principles we cannot comprehend. Energy weapons pass through their hulls. Quantum torpedoes simply disappear. Gravitational weapons have no effect. The coalition forms. The room erupted in frightened discussions. Species that had been enemies for centuries suddenly found common cause. The elegant Etherians, beings of pure thought housed in mechanical bodies, offered their reality-warping ships. The Plasma Collective promised their sun-powered dreadnoughts. The Phase Walkers brought vessels that could exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. One by one, the greatest military powers in known space pledged their forces. The holographic display updated continuously, showing sleek warships gathering at designated coordinates. These were vessels that represented millions of years of combined technological evolution. Ships with hulls made from compressed starlight. Weapons that could rewrite the laws of physics in localized space. Shields that bent spacetime itself. Admiral Krivax of the Voidborn Armada stood, her form shifting between states of matter as she spoke. The Voidborn will contribute 300 Phantom-class destroyers. Our phasing technology will allow us to strike from parallel dimensions. The Devourers cannot fight what they cannot touch. Executor Tal Shin of the Neural Collective added his pledge. 150 Thought-class cruisers. Our telepathic networks can coordinate attacks across light years instantaneously. We will achieve perfect tactical unity, the pledges continued. Soon the combined fleet numbered over 15,000 vessels, each one a masterpiece of advanced engineering. The assembly began to feel hope returning. Surely such power could stop any threat. The human arrival in a modest section of the gallery, almost forgotten by the grand powers, sat Ambassador Marcus Webb of Earth. He was a man in his 60s, with silver hair and calm gray eyes that had seen too much to be easily impressed. His simple dark suit contrasted sharply with the exotic appearances of other delegates. High Chancellor Vorthek's gaze swept across the assembly and paused on the human. Ambassador Webb, the Terran systems lie directly in the Devourer's projected path. What forces can Earth commit to this defense? The room fell silent. Many delegates had forgotten humans were even part of the Galactic Coalition. Earth had joined only 70 years ago, and their technology was considered laughably primitive by galactic standards. Webb stood slowly, his movements measured. Earth will deploy its home fleet to defensive positions. We have 42 capital ships ready for immediate deployment. A moment of silence, then laughter began to spread through the assembly. It started with small chuckles from the younger species and grew into open mockery from the established powers. The mockery begins. Admiral Krivax's form solidified enough to show what might have been a smile. 42 ships? Ambassador, the Voidborn Armada has patrol groups larger than your entire fleet. And forgive my directness, but are these not the same vessels we observed during your admission trials? The ones that still use chemical propulsion? They are, Webb confirmed without embarrassment. Commander Zixral's laugh boomed through his translator. I remember those trials. Your largest vessel, the Defiance I believe it was called, moved slower than our cargo haulers. Its hull was bare metal, scarred and patched like something pulled from a salvage yard. Executor Talshin added, "Our historical databases show human ships have not significantly changed design in over 200 years. While we have evolved through 17 generations of starship technology, you still fly what are essentially armored boxes with engines attached." The insults continued, each species adding their observations. The Etherians noted that human ships still used rotating sections for artificial gravity instead of gravity manipulation fields. The Plasma Collective pointed out that human weapons were still kinetic projectiles and primitive missiles. The Phase Walkers were amazed that humans had never developed energy shielding. The display of superiority High Chancellor Vorthek called up specifications of a standard human warship on the main display. The UESS Defiance appeared and fresh laughter erupted. The ship was a massive rectangular block, over 3 kilometers long but completely lacking aesthetic grace. Its hull was dark metal covered in sensor arrays, weapon turrets, and communication dishes that stuck out at odd angles. Massive engines jutted from the rear, clearly using fusion drives that other species had abandoned millennia ago. "Look at those armor plates," commented a Celeran military analyst. "Layered metal alloys at least 10 meters thick. So crude. Our light-based hulls are impervious to physical damage and weigh a fraction of that mass. And those weapons," added a Crichton officer. "Railguns? Missile tubes? We abandoned such technology when we learned to weaponize quantum foam. A single shot from our quantum disruptors can unmake matter at the atomic level." Webb listened to it all with the same calm expression. He had heard these criticisms before. During Earth's admission process, during trade negotiations, during every interaction with the wider galactic community. Humanity's technology was old. Humanity's ships were ugly. Humanity was primitive. The tactical discussion High Chancellor Vorthek brought the assembly back to order. "The combined fleet will establish a defensive perimeter at the Threshold Nebula. Our simulations show this gives us the best chance to engage the Devourers with tactical advantage. The nebula's exotic matter will disrupt their sensors while our advanced detection systems can pierce it easily." The tactical display showed the battle plan: elegant formations, coordinated energy strikes, phased attacks from multiple dimensions. It was beautiful, the culmination of millions of years of strategic evolution. "Ambassador Webb," Vorthek continued, "given your fleet's limitations, perhaps it would be best if human forces took up positions in the rear echelons. You could assist with evacuating civilian populations when the forward defenses engage the enemy." It was a polite way of saying, "Stay out of the way of real warships." Webb nodded slowly. "Earth's fleet will defend the Kepler Belt colonies. We have 17 million civilians in that sector who cannot be evacuated in time." Commander Zixral leaned forward. "Ambassador, the Kepler Belt is directly in the Devourer's path. If we fail at the Threshold Nebula, that position will face the full force of their fleet. Your 42 ships will be obliterated in moments." "Perhaps," Webb agreed, "but those are our people and we will stand between them and any threat." "That is what human ships do." Admiral Krivax's form flickered with something that might have been respect or pity. "Your courage is admirable, Ambassador, even if it is foolish. Very well. The human fleet will hold the Kepler Belt. We will send rescue vessels for your survivors after we destroy the Devourers at the Threshold." The meeting concluded with final preparations. The alien delegates departed to their magnificent ships, confident in their technological superiority and coordinated might. They spoke among themselves about the brave but doomed humans, primitives who did not understand the nature of modern warfare. The human preparation Ambassador Webb returned to his small courier ship, a utilitarian vessel that reflected human design philosophy. Once inside, he activated a secure quantum-encrypted channel. The signal traveled through a network of communication buoys that the aliens had never detected, using technology that appeared primitive but was actually highly specialized. "Fleet Command. This is Webb. The Coalition has taken the bait. They will engage at the Threshold Nebula as predicted. We have free positioning in the Kepler Belt." The response came from Admiral Sarah Blackwood, commander of Earth's home fleet. Her voice carried the confidence of someone who had spent 40 years fighting wars the rest of the galaxy knew nothing about. "Understood, Ambassador. How did they react to our ships?" "Exactly as anticipated. They laughed, dismissed us as primitives with museum pieces. Not one of them ran a deep structural scan or questioned why we would keep using old designs. Good, Blackwood replied. Let them laugh. The Defiance and her sisters are ready. All systems are nominal. The packages are loaded and armed. We will show these advanced civilizations what human engineering really means. Webb allowed himself a small smile. The Devourers have never faced kinetic weapons, Admiral. They have never encountered EMP warfare. They have fought species that rely on energy and exotic matter. They have no idea what's coming. Neither does the Coalition, Blackwood said. Give us 3 days. When the Devourers break through at the threshold, we will be waiting. In the Kepler Belt stretched across space, a vast region of asteroids, mining stations, and colonial habitats. Hidden among the rocks and ice, the human fleet waited in absolute silence. 42 warships, each one a brutal testament to humanity's philosophy of war. The UESS Defiance hung motionless in the shadow of a massive asteroid. Admiral Blackwood stood on the bridge, a space that would have shocked the alien delegates who mocked human technology. The bridge was not filled with holographic displays and thought-controlled interfaces. Instead, it held hundreds of physical controls, backup systems, and redundant equipment. Every critical system had 3 independent methods of operation. Captain James Rodriguez, the Defiance's commanding officer, reviewed the tactical display. Admiral, all ships report ready status. Weapons are loaded, reactors are running cold, and stealth systems are engaged. The Coalition fleet is moving toward the Threshold Nebula. They should engage the Devourers in approximately 60 hours. Blackwood nodded. The crew around her worked with quiet efficiency. These were veterans of the corporate wars, the Mars Rebellion, and the asteroid conflicts. They had fought battles the rest of the galaxy never knew happened. They understood something the advanced civilizations had forgotten. War was not about elegance or technological superiority. War was about breaking the enemy's will and capacity to fight by any means necessary. Status of the kinetic packages? Blackwood asked. All railguns are loaded with penetrator rounds. Missiles are armed with nuclear and EMP warheads. The MAC cannons have their full load of depleted uranium slugs. We are ready to introduce the Devourers to the concept of momentum. Around the Defiance, the other ships of the fleet waited in similar silence. They were ugly by galactic standards, scarred and patched from decades of service. But every plate of armor had been tested in battle. Every weapon system had killed enemies and proven its worth. Every crew member knew their ship intimately, understood its strengths and weaknesses, and trusted it completely. These were not showpieces built to impress other species. These were warships built by a species that had spent its entire history fighting itself. Humanity had refined the art of killing through thousands of years of nearly constant warfare. When they finally reached the stars, they brought that expertise with them. The aliens had laughed at ships that still used bullets and missiles. They would soon learn why humanity had never stopped perfecting such weapons. The Devourers consumed energy and exotic matter. They were about to discover that a tungsten rod moving at a significant fraction of light speed did not care about dimensional phasing or quantum shields. The weight in the civilian colonies. 17 million people went about their lives unaware of the doom approaching them. They trusted the Galactic Coalition's advanced fleet to protect them. They believed the sophisticated aliens with their energy weapons and reality-warping technology would stop any threat. Only a few knew the truth. Only a few understood that Earth's fleet had been designed specifically for this moment. Humanity had studied the reports of the Devourers' advance. They had analyzed every encounter, every destroyed fleet, every failed defense, and they had recognized something the advanced species missed. The Devourers had never faced primitive technology because they came from beyond the galaxy, where they had consumed civilizations even more advanced than the Coalition. They had evolved to counter energy weapons, quantum attacks, and dimensional warfare. They were perfect predators of advanced prey, but they had never encountered prey that still used rocks, explosives, and kinetic energy as weapons. They had never fought an enemy that built armor to stop physical projectiles rather than energy beams. They were about to receive an education in human military doctrine. Admiral Blackwood stood before the viewing port, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Coalition fleet was preparing for battle, confident in their superiority. They would learn humility soon enough. All hands, she announced over the ship-wide communication system. In approximately 60 hours, the Devourers will break through the Coalition lines. They will come to this belt expecting easy prey. They will find 42 human warships waiting for them. They will find crews who have been preparing for this fight their entire lives. They will find out why humanity does not build pretty ships. We build ships that win. All stations maintain readiness. Blackwood out. The crew returned to their duties, checking weapons, running diagnostics, preparing for the battle that would determine humanity's place in the galaxy. In the silence of space, surrounded by mocking aliens and approaching doom, the human fleet waited with patient confidence. The galaxy was about to learn why Homo sapiens had climbed to the top of Earth's food chain and why they intended to stay there among the stars. The awakening, the Threshold Nebula burned with colors that defied natural physics. Clouds of exotic matter swirled in patterns that hurt to observe. Remnants of a supernova that had occurred when the galaxy was young. The Galactic Coalition fleet hung in perfect formation at the nebula's edge. 15,000 warships representing the pinnacle of advanced civilization. The Coalition's confidence High Chancellor Vorthek stood aboard his flagship, the Eternal Light, watching the tactical displays with satisfaction. The fleet's formation was a masterpiece of military coordination. Voidborn Phantom-class destroyers held the flanks, ready to phase between dimensions. Etherian reality warpers formed the center, their weapons capable of unmaking matter itself. Plasma Collective dreadnoughts provided overwhelming firepower, while Neural Collective cruisers linked every ship into a single tactical consciousness. All vessels report ready status, announced Fleet Coordinator Shenva, a crystalline being whose body refracted light into rainbow patterns. The nebula's exotic matter is providing perfect sensor cover. The Devourers will not detect us until they are within optimal firing range. Admiral Krivax's form flickered into existence beside Vorthek, her consciousness transmitted across light years. Our dimensional sensors detect the Devourer fleet approaching. They number precisely as predicted, 40,000 capital vessels, each operating on principles that violate known physics. They will arrive in 20 minutes. Commander Zixeral's voice crackled through the communication network. Let them come. They face the combined might of 200 civilizations. Our energy output alone could ignite a star. Victory is inevitable. The fleet waited with absolute confidence. They had planned for every contingency, run 10 million simulations, and coordinated their attack patterns to perfection. The Devourers might consume matter and energy, but they had never faced a united galaxy fighting with technology refined over millions of years. First contact, the Devourers emerged from faster-than-light travel like nightmares becoming real. Their ships defied description, vast structures that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. They were not built so much as grown, organic-looking vessels covered in writhing tendrils and pulsing membranes. Each ship consumed the space around it, leaving trails of darkness where matter ceased to exist. All ships, commence firing, Vorthek commanded. The Coalition fleet unleashed its fury. Quantum disruptors tore at reality itself. Plasma beams hot enough to melt planets lanced across space. Reality-warping weapons tried to unmake the Devourer ships at the fundamental level. Phase weapons struck from multiple dimensions at once. It was the most concentrated display of firepower in galactic history. The Devourers absorbed it all. Energy weapons simply disappeared into their hulls, consumed and converted into more mass. Quantum attacks faded as if they had never existed. Reality-warping weapons found no purchase on vessels that existed outside normal spacetime. The phase attacks passed through the Devourer ships like light through glass, causing no damage whatsoever. Impossible. Shenva's crystalline structure flashed with alarm. Every weapon system is ineffective. They are consuming our attacks and growing stronger. The Devourers did not slow their advance. They moved through the Coalition fleet like sharks through a school of fish. Tendrils extended from their hulls, touching Coalition ships. Where they made contact, vessels simply ceased to exist, their matter and energy absorbed in seconds. Admiral Krivax tried to phase her ships into parallel dimensions, but the Devourers followed them there. Commander Zixeral's heavily armored dreadnoughts fired their most powerful weapons at point-blank range, only to watch the Devourers grow larger from the energy. The Neural Collective's perfect coordination meant nothing when every tactic failed simultaneously. The route fall back, Vorthek ordered, his translucent form flickering with terror. All ships retreat to secondary positions. The Coalition fleet broke formation, abandoning their careful tactical arrangements in favor of pure survival. Ships that had never retreated from any enemy fled before the advancing Devourers. Of the 15,000 vessels that had engaged, Over 2,000 were already gone, consumed without leaving even debris behind. The Etherian reality warpers tried one final desperate attack, combining their power to literally delete a section of space-time where several Devourer ships floated. For a moment it seemed to work. Then the Devourers simply grew new mass to replace what had been removed, pulling matter from surrounding space to rebuild themselves. They learned from every attack, Executor Talshin reported, his telepathic voice carrying pure fear. Each weapon we use they adapt to counter. They are evolving in real time. The retreat became a rout. The most advanced fleet in galactic history fled in panic, with the Devourers pursuing at leisure. They did not hurry because they did not need to. They could not be harmed, could not be stopped, and they were hungry. The human sector. The Coalition remnants streamed toward human space, 8,000 ships remaining from the original 15,000. Behind them, the Devourers followed, a dark wave of consumption that would not stop until it had devoured the entire galaxy. Emergency transmissions flooded all channels. This is the eternal light to all Coalition forces. The threshold defense has failed. All civilian populations in the Outer Rim are to be evacuated immediately. Recommend all military assets fall back to the core systems for final defense. Ambassador Webb received the transmission aboard his courier ship, still positioned near the Kepler belt. He opened a channel to Admiral Blackwood. Admiral, the Coalition fleet is in full retreat. The Devourers are pursuing. Estimated arrival at our position in 40 hours. Understood, Blackwood replied calmly. All human vessels move to intercept positions. It is time to show the galaxy what real warships can do. The 42 ships of Earth's home fleet came alive. Fusion reactors that had been running cold suddenly flared to full power. Engines that seemed primitive ignited with fusion fire, accelerating the massive vessels toward the approaching storm. Weapon systems that had been dismissed as ancient relics powered up with deadly purpose. The Devourers mistake the Devourer fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler belt. Their sensors, which operated on principles beyond understanding, detected the human fleet immediately. 42 vessels arranged in a loose defensive formation around the civilian colonies. The Devourers paused, analyzing their new prey. The sensors reported ships using chemical and nuclear fusion for power, hulls made of simple metal alloys, weapons that relied on kinetic projectiles and chemical explosives. This was prey even more primitive than the species they had just routed. The decision was immediate. A vanguard force of 500 Devourer ships broke from the main fleet, moving to consume the human vessels quickly before continuing to the civilian colonies. There was no caution, no careful approach. Why would there be? These ships were less advanced than anything they had encountered in 10 million years of consumption. Admiral Blackwood watched the approaching Devourer vanguard on her tactical display. 500 ships against 42. By any conventional measure, humanity was about to be obliterated. Around her, the bridge crew worked with focused intensity, hands on physical controls, eyes on backup displays ready for battle. Range to targets? She asked calmly. 400,000 kilometers and closing, reported the weapons officer. They are not taking evasive action. They appear to be moving directly toward us at maximum speed. Overconfidence, Captain Rodriguez observed. They consume the Coalition's energy weapons without effort. They think we are even easier prey. Blackwood allowed herself a cold smile. Then let us educate them. All ships weapons free. Fire when ready. The first lesson, the USS Defiance's railgun spoke first. Twin magnetic accelerators, each 300 meters long, hurled tungsten penetrator rods at 17% of light speed. The projectiles were simple metal, wrapped in ablative shells with no exotic properties or advanced technology, just mass, velocity, and physics. The penetrator rounds crossed the distance in seconds. The Devourers did not even attempt to avoid them, because their sensors had never been designed to track physical projectiles. Energy weapons, quantum attacks, dimensional strikes, these they could detect and counter. But chunks of metal flying through space at relativistic speeds were beneath their notice, until they hit. The tungsten rods struck Devourer hulls with the force of nuclear weapons. The kinetic energy transfer was devastating. Devourer ships that had absorbed planet-killing energy beams without damage suddenly found themselves with massive holes punched completely through their organic structures. The rods passed through the first ship, through the second ship behind it, and continued until they had penetrated 5 vessels in a straight line. Across the human fleet, 42 warships opened fire with weapons the galaxy had forgotten. Railguns unleashed storms of metal. Magnetic acceleration cannons fired depleted uranium slugs the size of cars. Missiles that still used chemical propulsion and simple guidance systems streaked toward the enemy. The Devourers tried to absorb the attacks as they had absorbed everything else. Their energy-consuming abilities activated, trying to drain the kinetic force from the projectiles. But momentum was not energy that could be absorbed. It was mass in motion, governed by physics that could not be negotiated with or evolved against. A Devourer ship extended its tendrils to consume an incoming missile, expecting to drain its power source. Instead, the missile's nuclear warhead detonated on contact. The explosion was not energy that could be easily absorbed. It was physical force, heat, radiation, and expanding gases. The Devourer ship recoiled, its organic structure damaged by the primitive attack. The human philosophy, all ships, adjust targeting, Blackwood commanded. Focus fire, cripple their propulsion systems. Let us see how they adapt to losing their ability to move. The human fleet demonstrated coordination born from centuries of fighting each other. They did not have telepathic networks or quantum entanglement communication. They used simple radio transmissions and coordinated with practiced teamwork. Each ship knew its role, trusted its commanders, and executed with brutal efficiency. The UESS Defiance rolled along its axis, bringing its portside weapon batteries to bear. Hundreds of point defense guns designed to stop incoming missiles tracked Devourer tendrils and shredded them with streams of tungsten bullets. Main batteries fired again, railguns punching holes through Devourer hulls with mechanical regularity. The UESS Valiant, a carrier-class vessel, launched its fighters. Small craft that aliens had mocked as obsolete burst from launch tubes. These were not elegant ships with energy shields and plasma weapons. They were armored cockpits with engines and guns, flown by pilots who understood something the advanced civilizations had forgotten. Sometimes you needed to get close and personal. The fighters swarmed Devourer ships like angry insects. They carried missiles tipped with nuclear warheads, bombs filled with high explosives, and rotary cannons that fired depleted uranium rounds. They flew in patterns perfected in Earth's atmosphere, using evasive maneuvers that confused sensors designed to track energy signatures. The adaptation fails. The Devourers tried to adapt as they had adapted to every previous attack. They evolved defenses against energy weapons, but kinetic weapons did not care about energy absorption. They tried to phase out of normal space, but physical objects existed in all dimensions simultaneously. They attempted to consume the metal projectiles, but the sheer volume of fire overwhelmed their biological processes. For the first time in their existence, the Devourers encountered a problem they could not solve through evolution. They had grown accustomed to fighting civilizations that had abandoned primitive technology in favor of advanced energy manipulation. They had never faced an enemy that still threw rocks, just very fast rocks wrapped in metal and fired with electromagnetic acceleration. A particularly large Devourer ship, perhaps a command vessel, tried a different approach. It extended massive tendrils toward the Defiance, attempting to consume the ship directly. The tendrils reached across 200 kilometers of space, writhing and pulsing with dark energy. Captain Rodriguez did not flinch. EMP packages, full spread, fire. The Defiance launched a spread of specialized missiles. These weapons did not carry nuclear warheads or high explosives. Instead, they contained electromagnetic pulse generators, technology that the galaxy had considered obsolete for millions of years. When they detonated around the Devourer ship, they created massive pulses of electromagnetic radiation. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The Devourer ship's organic electronics, which operated on quantum principles and exotic matter interactions, suddenly found themselves overwhelmed by simple electromagnetic interference. The tendrils froze in space, their coordination lost. The ship's ability to consume energy flickered and failed. "Now," Rodriguez ordered. "Main guns. Concentrated fire on that target." The Defiance's primary weapons spoke with thunder that could be felt through the ship's massive frame. Twin streams of tungsten penetrators hammered the disabled Devourer ship. Without its defenses active, the organic structure proved surprisingly fragile. The ship came apart under the sustained fire, breaking into chunks that drifted lifeless through space. The turning point, the Coalition fleet, still retreating toward the core systems, Receive sensor data from the battle. On command bridges across 8,000 ships, aliens stared at their displays in disbelief. The primitive human fleet was not just surviving, they were winning. High Chancellor Vorthek watched the tactical feed with growing amazement. How is this possible? We threw everything at the Devourers and accomplished nothing. The humans are using weapons we abandoned millions of years ago. Yet they are destroying enemy vessels. Admiral Krivak solidified her form completely, abandoning energy existence to focus entirely on what she was witnessing. Look at their tactics. They are not trying to out-technology the enemy. They are using simple physics. Kinetic energy, electromagnetic pulses, nuclear detonations. These are forces that exist in the base reality, that cannot be adapted against or absorbed. Commander Zixral's voice carried a new tone of respect. We built our weapons to fight other advanced civilizations. We forgot the fundamentals. The humans never stopped refining them. Those ugly ships are not primitive. They are specialized. In the Kepler belt, the battle continued with ruthless efficiency. The Devourer vanguard had been reduced from 500 ships to less than 300. They tried to retreat, but human missiles were faster than their organic propulsion systems. They tried to adapt their defenses, but you cannot evolve an answer to a depleted uranium slug moving at 15,000 kilometers per second. The UESS Defiance led the fleet forward in a coordinated assault. Every ship fired in sequence, creating a continuous barrage of kinetic death. Railguns never stopped firing, their magnetic coils launching projectiles in rhythmic thunder. Missile tubes reloaded and fired again, crews working with practice speed. The bridge shook with each salvo, but the crew never wavered. The message Admiral Blackwood opened a channel to the Coalition fleet, knowing they were watching. Her voice was calm but carried steel underneath. Coalition Command, this is Admiral Sarah Blackwood of the United Earth Space Force. The Devourer vanguard has been neutralized. The main fleet is holding position. I suggest you stop running and pay attention. She gestured, and her communication officer transmitted tactical data to every Coalition ship. The information showed human weapons specifications, engagement strategies, and most importantly, the theory behind their success. The Devourers evolved to counter advanced technology, Blackwood explained. They consume energy, adapt to exotic matter, and phase through quantum attacks. But they never encountered kinetic weapons because every civilization they consumed had abandoned such technology. They are vulnerable to physical force because they never needed defenses against it. High Chancellor Vorthek's voice came through the channel, hesitant but respectful. Admiral Blackwood, can your fleet stop the main Devourer force? There are nearly 40,000 ships remaining. Blackwood looked at her tactical display, 40,000 Devourer vessels against 42 human warships. The odds were insane, but her crews were ready, her weapons were loaded, and she had spent 40 years preparing for the impossible. Chancellor, we will do what humans always do. We will fight with everything we have, using every weapon at our disposal, and we will not stop until the enemy is destroyed or we are. That is what these ugly ships were built for. She closed the channel and turned to her crew. All ships reload and prepare for main engagement. The Devourers have seen what happens when they underestimate human engineering. Now they are going to learn why we are the apex predators of our planet. Captain Rodriguez, take us forward. The main battle begins. The UESS Defiance and her sister ships accelerated toward the main Devourer fleet. Their fusion engines burned at maximum output, pushing the massive vessels to speeds that seemed impossible for such crude technology. The hulls, scarred and patched from decades of service, held together through engineering excellence and careful maintenance. The Devourers recognized the threat now. They arranged their fleet into a combat formation, preparing to overwhelm the human ships through sheer numbers. 40,000 vessels moved as one, a dark wave that would consume everything in its path. But something had changed. The Devourers no longer approached with careless confidence. They had learned that these primitive prey had teeth, and those teeth could kill. They moved cautiously, trying to analyze the threat, searching for a way to counter weapons that should not work but did. Admiral Blackwood stood on her bridge, surrounded by her crew, watching the approaching doom with the calmness of someone who had made peace with death long ago. Around her, men and women worked their stations with focused intensity. They were humanity's last defense, 42 ships against an enemy that had consumed galaxies. All ships, she announced over the fleet communication network. This is Admiral Blackwood. In the next hour, we will face the greatest test humanity has ever known. The enemy outnumbers us nearly 1,000 to 1. They have consumed civilizations more advanced than ours. They believe they are inevitable, but they have never fought humans before. They have never faced a species that climbed out of caves, conquered a world, and reached for the stars despite every obstacle. Show them why humanity does not surrender. Show them why we build ships to last. Show them what happens when they threaten our people. All batteries, fire at will. The human fleet opened fire, and the Kepler belt lit up with the fury of a species that refused to die. Railguns thundered, missiles streaked through space, and nuclear fire bloomed against the darkness. The battle that would determine humanity's fate had begun, and the galaxy watched in amazement as the primitives showed the advanced civilizations how war was truly fought. The Devourers had mocked humanity's fleet, dismissing it as relics and museum pieces. Now, as tungsten rounds punched through their hulls and nuclear warheads tore apart their organic structures, they understood their fatal mistake. They had judged by appearance rather than capability. They had assumed primitive meant weak. They were learning in the final moments before their destruction that humanity's greatest weapon was not their technology. It was their refusal to quit, their ability to adapt, and their willingness to use any means necessary to protect their own. The warships had awakened, and the galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again.